Where's
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of when softball in the Valley was great. We have, of course, Jack Walsh, who was a guest last time on the show, and today we have, you know, really when he came onto the scene, Kasden Softball really started to take off. I think it was 1969, and of course, that is Dave Barone, who was also an outstanding athlete at Ansonia High School. So, Dave, thank you for coming on today. It's really cool that you could come on.
Thanks for having me.
So, Jack, I brought this up to you off air, but I was curious about this. I know for years you ran different derby leagues and stuff, but who actually ran the softball league when you guys first put Kasdan together?
Peter Dante. Peter Dante was the recreation director for the city of Derby. And, Derby wasn't an ASA league. It was just, you played for the fun of it. There were some teams that were, I would call bear league teams because they played bear games. I think we played one bear game in the entire time we were cast. Okay. And that was because Steve Tracy wanted to play against Over the Hill with one. But that's the only one I can recall.
Steve drank beer back in those days?
No. We got in the first year we played. Well, no, let me backtrack a little bit. The first game that was the start of this was we were at Daddy-O's Market. Okay. And it was just the end of the year. A bunch of guys got together and we played in the Valley softball tournament. None of us had ever played a softball game in our life. And of course, they must have seeded the tournament because we drew Simonetti. Well, that was the best team in the Valley at the time. And so our first year ended with a perfect record. We were 0-1. Got beat by Simonetti's. I think they beat us like 9-1. But and then the next year we played as the Derby Mets, and we weren't that bad. 27-19. So a bunch of guys never played and had to collect quarters from everybody to pay the umpires. That wasn't too bad. And then the next year, we got a lot better because we were Duchess, and Duchess sponsored us, and we had a pretty good team, but nothing like what we became. The record was 29-18, and then the next year 68. That was the first year we were Kasdan, and that was a complete change. Okay, that was a complete change, and Mr. Fitzpatrick, took over the sponsorship. And he was just such a fantastic guy. He really was. And the only thing is he bought us our uniforms the first year. And, oh, God, these uniforms were awful, as were most of the uniforms back then. But we had a pretty good year. Okay, we were 50-16. Wow. But we got shellacked in the playoff to go to the state tournament. Okay, we got, the Seymour team, Concordia, beat us pretty good. Okay. But I remember sitting in the bleachers down at wasn't Ray Best's Long Meadow, one of the other sites, and myself and my brother and John D. and Rich Super were sitting in the stands, and he said, we're going to be here next year. No doubt in our minds, we're going to be here. Now, the one caveat was we needed to find a couple of infielders. Okay. We didn't have a good infield at all. I'm not being critical of anybody. It's just the way it was. And we picked up Dave and we picked up Eddie Glenn. And Steve Arosha came that year too. Okay. So all of a sudden, we were a good defensive team. Okay. And, that year we made the state tournament. So that was the turning point. But, again, I'd say the key was Dave and Eddie. No doubt in my mind.
Right. And Dave, let me ask you, had you known Jack before you played for Kasdan? I mean, I know you grew up in Ansonia, but did you two ever meet before that?
No. Freddie Kumo, my cousin, was the first one who approached me. I had just got finished playing hardball at Milford Academy. And as a matter of fact, I hit a higher average at Milford Academy than I did my first year at Kasdan. So don't give me that crap about slow pitch. But no, I didn't know Jack or Jimmy. And they were lucky enough to become my friends.
Long time. Freddie had come the year before. Freddie had come the year before when we semi-merged, because there was a Kasden team. Okay, there was a Kasden team, but then we merged, and it was really the old Duchess team that became Kasden, with several of the guys that had played with the original.
Yeah, but Eddie and I were good friends, and I made sure Eddie came, and then Stevie Roach and I hung around. So it was great.
Baseman too. He was a good defensive player too. So all of a sudden we had an infield.
First big game I remember was at Nolan Field when we beat the Jellos. Roger Goodson. I can't remember all the names like Jack could, but I think we beat them in a close game. And then we realized that we could play with anybody in the Valley.
Yeah, they were the preseason favorites. Everybody thought they were going to be the best team in the Valley. And actually, Dave, I think the game might have been at Ryan.
Was it Ryan? Okay.
Remember, I think it was a doubleheader. We played Lycoming in the first game. Remember, they were the defending national champs, and then we were going to play Jellos in the second game. Two tough games, and Lycoming they hammered us pretty good, and they had a great team, but
everybody else
got them back years later. But they had a great team, so some incredible players on that team. But in the second game, we upset a Jellos. And as Dave said, that was the indication that, they're going to be pretty good. And yet we struggled during the year. We had to play them in the playoffs. And we got beat the day before. Remember, Dave?
I do.
Twice the day before.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We got beat by, I won't even mention the name of the team. They weren't very good in a Valley Independent game. And we had to go to West Haven in the afternoon. West Haven game, we got shut out, which, I don't know if that happened 10 times in all the years we played.
Yeah.
And we had to play them in a best-of-3 playoff because we were the VIL representative and Jellos was the Valley Major League representative. The game was at Ryan Field. The first game was at Ryan because we were going to alternate. And, they jumped on us 2 or 3 runs right off the bat. But we came up in the bottom of the first, and Dave, you remember, Freddie hit the home run on the field house.
Yep. And that opened up the floodgates.
Everything changed right then and there. We won the first game, and everybody thought, well, that's a fluke. And then the second game, we beat them again at Nolan Field, and that's how we got to the state tournament for the first time. And
right.
We played 100 games a year, so we had to be insane.
Yeah.
Right. And let me ask you, Jack, when you were deciding that you were going to, be a part of a softball league yourself, your brother Jimmy, how did you guys go about picking a team? Did you talk to some of your friends from school? How did you get people together for this?
As I said, it was just guys that we hung around with. We had no intention of becoming what Kasden became. We were just going to play some games. And then like everything else, when you have some success, you begin to say, well, maybe we could do a little bit more. And then, getting Kasden as sponsor, that was a difference. Okay. Because if you want to play, the level we did play at, you had to have a very good sponsor. And we had the best. Gene Fitzpatrick was, he's in the ASA Softball Hall of Fame. It's one of the best sponsors. So he was just a great guy. And, of course, his son played on the team, too. So it just worked out. We're lucky.
And I think about this, guys, being that you were both young and, listen, you knew what it was like, sports in the Valley, especially high school sports in the Valley. And you got so many guys on this team who were from Derby, Ansonia, Seymour. I'm sure there were some Shelton guys. And when you're young like that, you still have that competitiveness and you want to win. So I'm sure there were times you took a loss like you would take a high school loss, personally. You played, like Jack said, in the beginning for fun, but in time, you really wanted to win those games as well.
We played seriously.
Yeah.
We want to win. There's no doubt about that. Again, we had all guys that were athletes. Okay. And, the irony is, and I think people to this day think we must have been crazy because it was one of the few places where guys from Ansonia and Derby got together to do something together. And we never had a problem with that. And, you look at how many guys from the Kasden teams went on to be very successful high school coaches in football, baseball, basketball, softball. We had an incredible group of guys that went on to do a lot of other things beyond softball in the Valley, including mayors, superintendents of schools, lawyers. We just had a good group of guys all the way through.
Yeah.
Dave, let me ask you this. Was there a particular field that you preferred to play on more than any others? I mean, what was like some of your favorite fields to play on?
Well, the one I liked the best was Nolan Field. I just thought it was wide open, and it gave us a better chance to win until we got a few more power hitters later on. Yeah. But then we only really had Freddie. Kenny Kohansky was just an automatic hit. I lefty or righty. But we didn't have a lot of power hitters back then.
No.
Later on, Chatfield Park, you could bunt the ball over the left field wall. Like John B. said, I was F7. Get out the stamp.
Too bad the stamp.
We wanted to play in an open field because we always thought we were the best defensive team on the field.
Right. And that was difficult in the Valley because a lot of the fields were not that good, particularly for the poor infielders. A lot of fields were not very flat and even. We played on some crazy ones. Leo Segalka asked me that after the last time we did the show. He said, "Can you talk about some of the fields?" I'll give you a couple. Dave, I don't think you remember ever playing at Burtville, did you?
No, never.
Okay. Burtville is on Route 34, and there was a car dealership put there later on, but I mean, that was an incredibly bad field. Bradley School was no gem. I'm trying to think of other ones that we played on. I mean, Sunnyside. You remember Sunnyside? We'll talk about the famous game with the ball hitting the trees. Remember that one?
Yes.
You already talked about Chatfield. It had the shortest left field in the world. Jack, I can't think of his name. He always killed us. When we lost in that playoff, he just kept hitting it over the left field fence. We couldn't get him out.
From Seymour?
Yeah. He played with Concordia, so it may have been the year before he started playing. Jack Sember. Okay.
Yeah, I didn't play against Jack.
No, he was a good hitter on that field, and they had a good team. I think they finished second in the state the year that they beat us to go. What other fields did we play on? Well, outside the Valley, we played in Pennsylvania on one of the first artificial turf fields in the country. The Pirates had a farm team in York, Pennsylvania. And before they built Three Rivers, they wanted to test the artificial turf. So they put it in this field in York, and we played in the tournament down there.
Wow. That's like a 6-hour ride, isn't it? I mean, that's pretty far.
We played in a lot of turns, particularly on the holidays. We'd play in turns, but York was special. It was interesting in a lot of ways. First of all, the people thought we were totally nuts. They were running into our dugout screaming at us, and But we actually won our bracket, and that was a very tough tournament. All the teams there were really, really good. But
big hitters.
Yeah, the interesting thing about that was the turf. We weren't used to playing on the turf, and they didn't have the cutouts. So when you were sliding on the turf. Charlie DeCenzo and Jimmy got burnt pretty badly.
Yeah.
Okay? I mean, it was – and other guys were putting aluminum foil in the bottom of their shoes to keep the heat from coming. Because we played, I think it was a 4th of July tournament. It was hot. was hot. But the nice thing was no bad bounces. If you were an infielder, you had to love it. The ball came faster.
I was going to say, it came on top of you. Boom.
Yeah, but at least it wasn't, bouncing up, hitting you in the head or anything. So, that was pretty good. And, of course, I think for most of us, the favorite field was Ray Bustos.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Well, in York, was that where the guy hit the ball to dead center field and it bounced over the 400 fence in one bounce, and the ump was trying to give him a double, and we said, no, keep going.
I think that was in Virginia Beach, maybe.
Was it Virginia Beach?
But it could have been in York because,
I think we didn't play many games in Virginia Beach with the rain.
Yeah. Now, York, the fence was at Major League Baseball.
410.
So that's why what Dave said is probably the more accurate one. So, there were some great fields. And, there was a building boom of fields in the Valley. All of a sudden, fields were getting lights and towns were building more. Derby had Ryan Field, which Ryan Field really wasn't built for softball. Okay. And, what happened was at that time, Derby High School football got really good. And the field was awful. Okay. The field was not good. I mean, it was a grass field and too many uses, and it was dirt and whatnot. And then they decided they were going to finally upgrade it, but they had to do something with the softball field. So they built a new softball field on what was a parking lot. And not only did they build a new field, they put lights on it. So they were one of the first to add lights, and then everybody else started to add lights as well. So, softball was very popular. I mean, there were so many teams. When we played in multiple leagues, but the towns had a tough time keeping up with it. We had to make a deal with Peter Dante because he wanted us to get out of the league because he thought we were getting too good for the league. And we said, okay, but we still need a place to play. So that was the deal. If we got out of the league, they'd give us fields to use to play some of our games. So you don't even need the fields. There's very little softball anymore.
None. Zero.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned Bradley School because I can remember playing Babe Ruth games there. And if that twilight was in effect, you could not tell where the ball was going in the outfield. So that was always tricky because I can remember that happened to me a couple of times in right field. I could not find the ball once it was hit. I mean, it was crazy. It was not the best field by far, probably the worst, honestly.
Well, there were two different fields at Bradley, okay? When we started playing, it was the original Bradley field where left field was out towards, left field ran parallel to the school building.
With the building, right. Mm-hmm.
Okay? And then they built the new field with the lights, and they completely turned it around, okay? Because of sun issues. The worst one ever for the light or the sun was that Burfield field that I talked about. I mean, it was blinding at night, and the pitcher had such an edge. But if you got it in the right spot, you couldn't see it because the sun. If you were playing, a 6:00 game, it was crazy. But
right.
Look, we just wanted to play. Would have played in a cow pasture if we had to.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Now, let me ask you, as far was there ever a strategy that you guys had? Because I always heard that Jimmy, especially, if he hit that ball to the left side in the infield, you weren't going to throw him out because of his speed. I mean, was that Jimmy's game to try to hit everything to short and third because he knew with his speed he could get on base? Because I heard he almost hit close to 500.
Well, Jimmy was the Billy Bean of Valley softball. You know how Billy Bean is always credited in Moneyball that he figured out the analytics. I think we were probably at that time the only team that kept on base percentage. Okay, because Jimmy, he was correct. He said, "Look, if you want to score runs, you got to get your leadoff batter on base. Doesn't matter how, but if you're on base, you're more likely to score than if you're sitting on the bench." So we tracked it, and he was quick. I told you the story before about the tournament in Harrisburg. which was incredible. Dave, why don't you tell the story rather than me all the time?
No, you tell her because I won't. I'll mess it up. But I know what you're going to say. Go ahead.
Okay, we were playing in a tournament in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and we only had 10 guys. Zuba was a substitute, and maybe we had one other, and I'm forgetting his name now.
Was it Jeep?
Huh?
Jeep? Bernardini? Jeep?
No.
Oh, Nipper.
I forgot. But he really wasn't going to play. He didn't play during the year. And we got beat our first game. And then over the course of the next 2 days or 3 days, we had to win 9 straight, including beating this team from Virginia that was just killing everybody. So we won 7 straight. Now we're playing this team from Virginia. We had to beat them two games in a row. And we beat them in the first game. And it was in the middle of a housing development. Okay. And the people came to love Jimmy. They were calling him the White Rabbit. Okay. Because he'd get on base almost every time. It was ridiculous. So we're playing now in the championship game. And the game starts. And a big show, the third baseman takes 2 steps in to say, "You're not doing that to me." And of course, now the crowd has already caught on to this. So the crowd is going nuts. So Jimmy steps out of the batter's box and points the bat directly at the guy and says, "Yeah, I'm coming at you." The guy takes another step or 2 in. Jimmy gets in the batter's box. And of course, he hits it down to third base. And the guy panics, okay, because he knows he's got to throw it quickly. Jimmy takes 2 steps out of the batter's box, falls on the ground with cramps on his leg. He couldn't move, but the throw from third base went over the first baseman's head and over the fence. So Jimmy, lying on the ground, ends up on second base, okay? Yeah, it was unreal. And he ended up getting the MVP in the tournament.
Yes,
Okay?
Wow.
I think maybe one other time
he'd be two.
Huh?
Jimmy would be 2-3 feet down the line before he even swung the bat.
Yeah.
He was already on his way to first base. It was phenomenal.
But that was just funny. Well, we didn't think it was funny at that time because we did win the game. And again, having to play those 9 games in 90-degree heat, and that was something. But he was big on base percentage for people, especially at the top of the order, because we had some people who could drive in runs, but you need people on base. So I don't know if Jimmy's batting average was all that high, but he was always on base because people would throw it away just like that. So we were lucky.
Right. Now, Dave, I think one of the coolest things about you playing with Kasden Softball and stuff is you made some great friendships, and I know not just Jack, but and we had him on a couple times as well, but John D and you became very good friends as well. And I feel like John D, no matter who he sees, he's going to befriend that person. But you really, you got to know him really well, and he became a longtime friend of yours, correct?
Yes, absolutely. John was probably the funniest man I ever met in my life, especially when he was younger. He was just a different egg, boy. He couldn't run, he couldn't throw, he couldn't catch. But man, the son of a gun kid hit the softball, but that's all he could do. And he ran like a helicopter.
It's funny you mentioned,
he was really close.
We were talking about the fields before. I forgot. There was one field that we played on that was absolutely awful. It was in Beacon Falls. It was a big sand pit. Okay. And Dave, you might remember it was the controversial game after the team had the 3 ineligible guys, and Jimmy and John and Zuba had gone to New York and caught them. So they were thrown out. And then we had to play them on a Sunday. John D hit 3 home runs that day.
Wow.
Okay. Now he must have hit it pretty far because, as Dave said, he couldn't run worth a lick. He had bad legs, and I don't know if anybody else hit 3 home runs in a game for us, but he did. He did without a fan.
Nicky Bahoon did. He hit 3 in the Conley Pond.
Oh, okay, that's right.
And it drove cousin Freddie crazy. Yeah. Every time up, Freddie wanted to hit it 900 feet.
When he got one off of me, though, he hit it over the right field fence at Nolan the year he played with Preston.
Yeah.
Now, Jack, did John mainly play DH or did he play the field even though he wasn't a fielder?
Well, he pitched a little bit, but he was a pinch hitter. We used to joke, I would pitch and he'd pinch hit when we got to the end, and then we'd have to get a pinch runner for him. So I joke, as Dave said, we all joked at him. He couldn't field or whatnot, but he did hit.
He could hit.
He did hit. Okay.
And now, Jack, I was talking to a guy I know, and he's played for years in the Shelton League, and he pitches, and he's always told me he puts a little movement on the ball. Did you put any movement when you pitched, or did you just throw it there?
No, it wasn't about movement. It was trying to get it high.
Yeah.
Okay. High and legal still. Okay. Especially they put in a rule that if you hit a foul ball with 2 strikes, you were out. So that's when it was kind of important.
Okay.
I think the key for us was you wanted the pitcher to play defense. And again, we had a good infield. I mean, we did some things. I'd cover third base. Okay. Let everybody play deeper. And with Eddie and Dave, they had more range because I could go and cover second base if they were fielding the ball. So, but as far as moving the ball around, people will tell you they did this, they did that, but come on, it's thrown underhand. So the year that they had the unlimited distance, the unlimited height, which they brought down, but the year that was unlimited, that was kind of crazy. So
yeah, the best pitcher then was Gary Chuckta. Remember him in Seymour?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, he would throw it so high and he'd drop it right down for a strike. He was good. Thank God they got rid of that.
that was hard to hit, because you were used to something else, but it only lasted 1 year.
1 year.
Right. And I think of the Jack and Dave, I think of the Derby softball field. I mean, that fence was a hitter's fence, in my opinion. I mean, if you got a hold of one, that ball was going out. Were there a lot of guys that took advantage of that fence when you played there, or did you not play as many games there?
Yeah, I think we had a lot more home runs at Ryan. Sure, Dave, you had a few down there. I remember one time we played a team from Torrington, and man, that day the balls were just flying out. We were losing like 17-2. Okay, and we came back and we started hitting home runs. Well, not me. Others on the team started hitting home runs, and it went from 17-2 to 17-15. But it was just the left field because center field and right field were fine for distance.
We're normal, right?
Yeah. But, the short distances were, again, up at Chatfield. Colony Pond was a short one. The original Ryan Field was a short one. Most of them were right field.
Yeah.
Remember the one in Shelton with the trees hanging over? That was short in right field, too.
Yeah. That was Sunnyside, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Of course. Everything for the lefties.
Right. So, Dave, I know it's hard to remember all of them, but who are some of the players, like to say, Seymour and Shelton, I'll leave them out for now, but just Derby and Ansonia, who were some of the Derby Ansonia guys that played on this team? Give me some of the names.
Well, you have Steve Tracy, which everybody knows, Stevie Roshak, Jimmy Delavolpe. Of course, everybody knows Jack Hunt. Then from Seymour, we had Paul Sponheimer and Jimmy Sly, 2 great players. I mean, really good. Shelton, we had Mike Homkovics.
Yeah, very good.
Richie Bryce played. Freddie Kershaw came on later. I still don't like him, but he did come and play.
And let me ask you, if you had to guess, I mean, it's probably hard, but who would you say had the longest tenure of Kasden softball? Like, I mean, Jack, were you were pretty much there from start to finish, right?
No, I was there from the start, but not really to the. I think I played the last year because they needed a guy to avoid a forfeit. But no, Jimmy and Dave were the longest tenure. Okay,
right?
Because
they put up with me all those years.
Dave, I always say you always showed up, though. You were always there. So we made a joke about it, but you were the most dependable person. I don't think you ever missed a game.
No, and I had all my uniforms in the trunk of the car because I never know what we were wearing, and I wasn't going to sit because I had the wrong uniform. I'd wait to see Jackie and Jimmy walk into the field, and I'd know what uniform to put on.
Yeah.
And guys, I saw this in the paper once. Well, I saw it when I was researching for our Hall of Fame. I just happened to see it by accident, and I don't know how true it is, and I'm not going to mention the person's name. But what I found ironic was they show a guy with, I think he had like a plaque for getting his 3,000th hit. I mean, did people really even keep stats like that back then? Because it seems hard to believe that somebody would be keeping track of how many hits he had. But somebody was in the paper with their picture, 3,000 hits. I mean, did you guys keep track of a lot of stats over the years or just the seasons?
No, we had individual stats every year. We had a guy who didn't play, who just kept score.
Yeah.
So that's why we had stats. Rich Zuba, he was a football player, but he was definitely not a softball player. Okay, he was a football, and Dave, I'd have to say he was a football lineman, no hands either. So, but he kept scoring. He was tough.
Tough. Oh my goodness.
He was tough. I know a lot of other teams, you read things about guys getting all these hits, and you say, well, wait a minute. You got on an arrow. What do you mean a hit? On Kasden, if you got a hit, you got a hit, because Zuba was tough with that pencil.
But you go back to the stats, Mike, and Jimmy and Jackie had not only batting average, home runs, triples, doubles. They had putouts, assists, errors, double plays. They had everything on the sheet. Matter of fact, I think he has it up at Ryan Field, right?
No, well, I've got it here. I've got it, all the stats, and I've got them digitized now.
That Jack, I'll tell you what, man, you could put a book out just with all the Kasden stats, and people would read that. I think they'd really enjoy it.
I've got scrapbooks, okay, and interesting. This is not what the scrapbook looked like. But we kept the scrapbook not for the stats, okay? The scrapbook was kept because of our sponsor. Kasden put a lot of money into sponsoring us, and we made sure that all our games got in the paper, win or lose, okay? So that, when we went to talking about sponsorship, we'd say, well, look, you were in the paper all the time, all the games, because look, if they're sponsored, they want to get something in return. And, we weren't a restaurant. So it wasn't as though guys were going, afterwards to the bar, so he was just a great sponsor. Again, I can't say enough nice things about Gene Fitzpatrick.
Good guy.
Right. And I think, Jack, that was why yourself and Jimmy were very big about you will wear what the uniforms are, because they put the money into it. They were generous enough to sponsor it. And you were going to do that out of respect to them and make sure that these guys followed the rules.
Oh, absolutely. Again, if you're not going to wear them, then why buy them? I mean, that's, and our uniforms weren't cheap. Our uniforms were top quality. So
right.
I often joke, maybe we weren't the best team, but we were the best dressed team in the Valley. And everybody wore it. And even when guys moaned and groaned about it, I say the best proof of how important that was when all these guys went on to become head coaches in all the sports, and they all enforced their own dress code. So, it became embedded in the culture. That's what it comes down to.
Right. And let me ask you, Jack, I know you have all the stats. I know there's different tournaments you win, different championships. Do you have the total of how many championships Kasden won throughout their history?
Yeah, I could probably compile. I know that I don't have all the stats from the last 2 years, but our overall record that I've got was 1,001 wins, 381 losses.
Wow, that's pretty good. Wow,
yeah,
it really is.
We play. Some years we played a lot of games. I think the most we ever played. It's 1971. We were 87-25. So
yeah,
that's a lot of games. and that's hard to maintain. But Dave was there for all of it. But we went through cycles of different players. We had the original crew, then we had the second crew, and then we had the final crew when Freddie coached the last couple of years. Freddie Kershaw coached. So we went through phases because it's hard for people to play. When you're young, it's easy, but then people start getting married, they get jobs, they've got kids. It changes everything. And it wasn't just us. Again, I'd say the same thing about all the Valley teams that were serious about playing. If you were just going to go for Sunday or one day a week, anybody could do that. But it wasn't easy to play the kind of schedule we played.
Yeah, and I think you had to have a passion for it as well. And Dave, John D has told me this. He likes to repeat these things a lot, so I've heard this story 100 times. But is it really true that the Derby and Ansonia guys never discussed football during Kasden? It was strictly Kasden softball. Like there was never talk about Derby and Ansonia, really.
No, there really wasn't any, because first of all, you had Jack Hunt and a head coach for a while, Charlie DeCenzo, head coach at Derby. Those guys weren't going to talk about football. We had more important things to do, like beating Preston. But yeah, no, there wasn't much football talk at all, and there were a lot of high school football coaches on that team too. So
yeah, an awful lot. Again, I always say when they talked about Miami of Ohio being the cradle of college football coaches, Kasden was the cradle of all kinds of high school coaches in the Valley.
You also left out that Paul Sponheimer coached us one year.
That's right.
Yeah. And now, I think Kasden softball had a lot to do with this, but I know that Paul was Jack Hunt's best man at his wedding, and I believe Jimmy Delvopi was Paul's best man at his wedding. And I think it's because of the Kasden connection. These guys met each other. So I think that's the thing that really was cool about everything else, was the fact that you guys all made these friendships with each other that you probably don't make if you don't play softball together.
It's true.
It's true. Again, it was a good time. We enjoyed it. There were downs, so none of us liked losing. I'll tell you that. Did lose. We had one year where we were god awful. Okay, nobody remembers that. But one year, our record was 37-35. I don't know how we got through that. The year before, we'd been 60-31. And then the year after, we were 61-18. But in between, we were 37-35 one year. God, that was awful. And we were bad. We were bad.
Played 72 games?
Yeah.
Jack?
Probably
played 72
games. Yeah.
Wow. I don't remember that. I probably didn't play that year.
You played every year, Dave, so you had good years and bad years.
Yeah, I mean, I just think about this is like you get so fascinated when you hear the stories and all the fun everybody had. And I mean, let's be honest, I don't think you'll ever see softball like that again, where there's that many games. I think maybe now they play once a week if they do. And, it's definitely different now, where you guys were playing some double headers. You were playing 3 or 4 times a week. And I mean, like anything else, I mean, that was part of your life. I mean, it wasn't just like a hobby. It was almost like a job at times too.
Well, sports go through cycles. Now everybody's into pickleball. Who ever heard of pickleball a few years ago? Now it's on TV. I mean, and even softball. Softball, there was a major softball league. Donnie Ragusine played for the team in New Haven. We all kind of thought it was funny because they said, one day they're playing against us, and next year they're calling it the major league of softball. And I think that went on for 3 or 4 years, but it never really made money. But they did get paid. And Donnie was, Donnie was just a super player. But there weren't that many people willing to go and play that kind of schedule and really not get paid that much. We played for nothing, so maybe we were crazy.
Yeah.
And I really think about all the road trips you made, because at that time, as you guys know, like cars didn't really have air conditionings in them. You know, there were some, but not a lot. So you're making those
Come on, Mike,
travels.
we're not that old.
You know, so I know Jack Hunt, his family told a funny story one time. I think on the way to a softball tournament, Jack picked up a hitchhiker or something like that. And the guy sat with them for probably, you know, a good hour and a half or something until they dropped him off. So, I mean, there's always a funny story. And of course, there's the one where I think Barry got mad because you guys lost the tournament and he threw the second place trophy out and somebody had to go back and retrieve that, correct?
Oh, it was more than that. It was more than that. You know, they wanted us to apologize for him throwing the trophy in the trash can. This was in the state tournament down at Ray Bestos, and he did it right in front of the commissioner of the ASA, and they thought Barry was nuts, but that was Barry. The trophy didn't say first place on it. He didn't want anything to do with it, so he threw it in the trash, and no one else understood that mentality. Of course, everybody on the team understood, and Barry was extreme with that, but he didn't believe in second place.
Right. And we know how good a football player Barry was. How was he as a softball player? Was he decent or?
Yeah, he was. You know, I always say Barry had more bad luck in softball because he always hit the ball hard. But for some reason, it always found somebody's glove. He never had a high batting average, but he could hit the ball. It's just sometimes you're not as lucky as other people. But Barry was a great guy, just great guy. Anyone would love to have him on their team for any sport because he played basketball with us still.
Yeah.
Well, then you had Mo Monahan. Mo couldn't break a pane of glass, but he'd find that little loophole over the second baseman's head time and time again.
Yeah, he played third base before Steve came on.
Roche, Stevie.
Yeah. So it's
and Gary Cormack.
Yeah, Gary Cormack was really a good player.
Now, did you guys play in the fall or was it mostly spring and summer?
We'd play in a couple of tournaments in the fall, but we never played in. They started a fall league. We never played in the fall league.
Right.
We played enough games. We didn't need to play anymore. But and the funniest one, we did play in a tournament. I don't know, it was in New Britain. Dave, do you remember this? It was too late. It was in October. And we had been playing, and the week before we played in a game, and it started to rain. Okay. So they called the game, but we had to go back the next week. Okay. And it was, we only had 10 guys when we went back, and one of them was Rich Zuba. Again, the scorekeeper. This is really a funny moment in Kasden history. And again, he'd only play in a game if we didn't have enough guys. Okay. And he went up to bat. Now we had to drive an hour. It wasn't a close place. I don't know where exactly it was, but we had to go all the way back. And I don't know if we were winning or losing, but it was a close game. And he goes up to bat in the seventh inning. And, he couldn't hit worth a lick. But he's up at bat, and he takes every pitch, including the third one, which is a called strike. It was right down the middle. And, of course, we were rolling nuts. Why didn't you swing? Why didn't you swing? He said, well, answer this for me. He said, if I swing, what are the chances of me getting a hit? Probably 1 in 10. He says, if I don't swing, what are the chances that he's going to call it a ball? Because the count was 3-2. What are the chances he's going to call a ball and I get to first base? I said, Rich, you were right. You should have taken the pitch. And I don't know what happened in the game. I don't know if we went on to win the game or not, but that was one of the funniest moments in history. Right. And he did have to play in 1 or 2. I remember, I think it was in Virginia Beach, he had to play. And, again, he couldn't hit, but no one knew. The other teams didn't know. Right. He was a pretty good-sized guy. And he got up in one game, and he got 2 or 3 hits because, he he hit the ball and it just bounced in front of the plate or something. He got on base. So he was another good guy. I mean, how many people would come and keep score for you the whole time? It's just
in uniform.
In uniform.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to give him credit too, because I mean, I'm sure by doing a lot of that, it helped you accumulate a lot of these stats over the years.
And it is important. Look, everybody likes to see their stats. Well, everybody likes to see their good stats. Nobody likes to see their bad stats.
You
but
bury them.
You need some basis for comparison. Today, everybody does that. Everybody, it's every sport. Starting in the lowest levels. Everybody's got a computer. Everybody has the stats now. Everybody has video and pictures. The one thing I regret, we didn't take many pictures of Kasden down through the years. Very few pictures. No one had a camera. I do have a video. I don't know who shot the video. Okay. But the video is that doubleheader we talked about earlier when Lycoming killed us, and then we came back to beat Joel's. And I've got a couple of other. I joke one of them has John D's pitching, and somebody hits a ground ball, and he picks it up and he throws them out. I was joking. I said, "There's proof, John. You could do it. Not often, but you could
pick it."
It's a different time. But it was a great sport.
Who were some of the real good players you played against? If you had to think of some guys that were just phenomenal softball players, who were some of them that you competed against?
I'll let you go first, Dad, because I know who my number one is.
All right. Dickie Janes, Don Ragazine, a lot of Preston guys, Joey Zarnecki, they all could play. Frankie Olszewski, Paul Sponheimer, when he played in Seymour. Go ahead, Jack. Eddie Finnegan.
Donnie Ragazine was the top of my list, but Joe Zarnecki, certainly. All those guys that played with Lycoming. I mean, even though we did end the career of one guy that was All-American.
Charlie?
No. Remember the game we played in the state tournament, and it was all the guys from Lycoming and all the guys from Southington. And they put this team together, and they said this is the best softball team in Connecticut history because they had the national champs in the Industrial League, and the team have been great forever. I can't remember their name, from Southington. And they had this guy named Donnie Hansen.
I remember
who
him.
had been all worlds. When they went to national tournament, he was named all world. And they put those two teams together. And again, I remember they played in our tournament because we ran a tournament, and they won it easily. And they were mad at us because there was a guy in the tournament that won 15 for 16. And we named him the MVP. And they were really annoyed that Eddie Finnegan didn't get it. And Finnegan was a great player, but the other guy, made it in the championship game, and it was 15 for 16. I mean, he just had a phenomenal tournament. And don't you know, we ended up drawing them the first game in the tournament at Ray Bestos. Okay. And, if you read the Bridgeport paper the week before, they were talking about who could win. It was just handed to them. They're going to win. There's nobody who can touch them. Well, that's not the way it turned out. We played them in the opening game, and the key play early in the game was a throw that Steve Tracy made from the outfield. He threw out a guy at third base that, cut off their rally. And we came back and, I think we won the game fairly easy. But the funny part is the last out of the game, Hansen was the batter, okay? And he grounded back to me. And I'm just throwing him out of first base. It wasn't a great play or anything. It was just one hopper. But as he's going down to first base, he takes the shirt off.
Yeah.
Okay. And their dugout was on the first base side. He takes the shirt off, throws it in the dugout, and says, "You guys are losers. I'm done." Okay.
Oh, wow.
Okay. And don't you know, they got beat their next game too when they were done. Okay. And I don't think he ever played again. Okay. We had one other guy who did a modified strip tease. Dave, do you remember that one?
The outfielder at Harrisburg.
Yeah, you tell that one. You can tell that one.
I just know he just got so upset with his teammates that he walked off the field, and as he was walking off, he was the shirt, the shoes, the socks, and the pants, and he goes off. And I don't know if he went to the complex that was over there or what, but it was hilarious.
Walked from the outfield. The coach had hired at him for something, and he had enough. Whoop, whoop. He walked off. The only thing he had left were his shorts.
Wow.
And they were a good team. They were the Delaware State champions.
Yeah.
State champs.
So yeah,
It's amazing. It's amazing to me, though, the cast of people that played over the years. Correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't Vinny Greco play for a couple of years as well with Kasden?
I think that was in the last couple of years. I didn't play with him. Okay,
right, but I think he did.
But he and Brett Stanford did play. But Dave, you must have played with him because I did.
I don't remember, to be honest with you.
Yeah, because I know when we had the reunion.
I don't. Maybe I did.
Yeah, well, he swears he did. And if Brett played, they probably both played, but it wasn't when I played. Because
it could have been maybe our 1984, our last year.
Yeah.
Because I don't, that doesn't ring a bell. But Mike, I'm going to tell you the truth about the hitchhiking story with Jack Hunt. Not the one that you heard. It's pouring rain in Virginia Beach. Me, Jack Hunt, and Billy Musin want to go down and go to a bar, but we don't have a car. We didn't drive to Virginia Beach. So we're hitchhiking. Now you got this 6'8" guy, 5'8" guy, and a 5'10" guy. And a car stops, a little compact. Me and Billy squeeze in the back. Jack sits in the front, and there's a girl and her boyfriend. The boyfriend's driving, the girl's sitting in the middle, and Big Jack's there, and they're squeezed. It's a standard. Oh, the guy is working the clutch. The girl is hitting the gas pedal. So they go about a half mile down. Jack says, stop this car immediately. They stop the car. We get out, and off they go. That was what really happened.
Jack drove a van. Jack had a van.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he didn't drive that out of state, I don't think.
No, it wouldn't have made it. Wouldn't have made it.
And I have to believe Jack hit quite a few home runs over the years, correct?
When he hit it, he could hit it a long way.
Yeah.
I think the biggest one he ever hit was in Vermont, the tournament that we won. He hit that one about 340.
We had him and Spoonie. It was like the Twin Towers. The other Spoonie, John Spahn.
John, right.
Yeah.
But John didn't hit the ball over the shortstop's head.
No.
John was not a baseball player.
Jack Hunt made the single worst throw that I think I ever saw when we played. He generally was catcher, but this one game we were up in Wallingford, and for some reason he was playing third base. Okay. And he caught a ground ball, and there was a force play at the plate. Now again, that's only 60 feet away, or 90 feet, whatever it was, 65, whatever the bases were. He took the ball and he threw it over the backstop. Over the backstop. That's impossible, but he did. So next game he was back at catcher, that's for sure. But when he hit a ball, he could hit a long way.
But if he was here today, he would tell you he caught the ground ball.
Yeah,
the only ground ball he ever caught in his life.
Now, I always heard a story. Now, I don't know if this was when he was on the high school team or Kasden, but I always heard the story that John D played a game once with one lens missing out of his glasses. Is that true? Or
yeah, but that wasn't with Kasden. Okay, that was at Derby High School. He was playing first base, and they were getting all over him because they were throwing balls and he couldn't catch it. And it turns out he was missing one leg. that was Derby High School baseball, not Kasden.
School teacher. Come on.
Guys, I think the next time you guys come on, the goal will be to get John Sponheimer, to get Charlie, to get John D, and maybe Jimmy Delavolpe. And I think it'd be a lot of fun because everybody will have their stories to tell. And I just think that this is something that is so cool about what the Valley is, and the softball that went on for all those years, and even the basketball. You mentioned Nick Bahoon. Jack, correct me if I'm wrong, but Nick even played in the over 40 for many years in the Derby League as well. So, I mean, it's almost like, they had that rivalry in football, but for the most part, Derby and Ansonia really kind of, they bonded together in a lot of ways, and especially in these men's leagues over the years.
Yeah, we never had any problems on the football thing. Now, in the off season when they were coaching against each other, a different story. And we had so many guys that coached, though. We had so many guys that
yeah, coached. Yeah. Paul, John, Jimmy Del Volpe, Jack. Yourself, Jack, Charlie, John D. You could go on, and I'm probably missing a couple, but Kenny Pereiras. He played a lot in the basketball league for Kasden. So, you had so many guys, and you always say to yourself, God, how'd they have the time to do all this? But they made it work.
Len Zonder, before the Evening Sentinel closed down, he wasn't a sports editor. He worked for him in sports. It was, Harry Katzen was the sports editor. But one night, Dave, you must remember, because you were there. I know you were. We had a lot of the guys that did go on to become high school coaches go and have a session with him at the old Evening Sentinel. And he wrote an article. I wish I had kept it, because it was a great article about how many of the guys from Kasden went on to be head coaches, not only become coaches, but were very successful as coaches. I take a great deal of pride in that. I really do.
Yeah.
The guys from Kasden stayed around and made a mark in other areas in the Valley.
Yeah, and Jack, I think about this too. Over the years, whether it was softball, the men's league, they went through different sponsors. I think Pepe's at one time might have been, I forget the name of it, but they were something different. But really, Kasden, they continued to sponsor year in and year out, softball and the basketball league. Teams were kind of changing different sponsorships, but Kasden never did. It was they always were, kind enough to continue to sponsor.
Great sponsor. Even when they changed hands, they later became, I forgot the other names, but just great people. And that all started with Mr. Fitz. And I think he discovered later on, Mark let it drop one point. I think he took some of that money out of his own pocket to pay for some things, which I wish he hadn't done that. But that's the kind of person he was. He was special. And Preston, they had a great sponsor too. The same thing. Okay, but
he was a good guy. Yeah.
Yeah, but we were lucky because you really needed a sponsor if you wanted to play the way we did.
Right. Well, guys, I really appreciate this. And I can tell you this, Dave, that if I'm able to get John D on next time, I won't even have to talk. I know John and you will just be going at it in a playful way, but I could just sit back and relax. But I really do enjoy doing this. And I thank you both for coming on, and we will do it again. And like I said, I'll get Charlie, I'll get Spoonie, and it'll be a lot of fun. So thank you again for coming.
We might even get a couple of the opponents that we played against too. That'd be
cool. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. But
right,
thank
Mike.
you both.
Thank
you again. And I'll see you guys soon. Thanks again, guys.
All righty.
Thanks,
Jack,
Mike.
I'll see you.
Okay.
And that's, of course, when softball was big in the Valley. That was Jack Walsh and Dave Barone for Mike Kenichi. I'm saying good night, everyone.